Okay, it's 5:30. The regular monthly meeting of the Board of Commissioners of the Park District of the City of Fargo will come to order. We have a consent agenda. Did everybody get a chance to look through the different items? Any questions? Anything we want pulled out? Do we have a motion?
Yeah, Stacy, I'd like to pull out item D.
D?
Yeah.
Okay,
The
we'll
approval
pull.
and award of livewire.
Okay, we'll pull D out. Do we have a motion to approve A, B, C, E, and F?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Dave, poll the board.
Commissioner Rosted,
Yes.
Commissioner Deutsch,
Aye.
Commissioner Dawson,
Aye.
Commissioner Morgan,
Aye.
Commissioner Griggs.
Aye, motion carries. So we'll go to item D, or do we add that into the rest of the agenda? We're on meeting number 3 with consent agenda, so we're still learning.
I would just move it to the end.
Move to the end?
Jeff? Yeah. Cool, yeah.
Okay.
So that'd be item 10.
Okay. All right, next up, recognition of audience. And I know we have someone in the audience who would like to speak.
Anybody like to speak?
Yeah, now the window.
Oh, yep.
Good evening, commissioners, staff. Great to be here with all of you today. As you may know, I've been excited to be engaged in the Island Park Pool project and see a really amazing opportunity for our community at hand.
Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah,
please?
sorry. Yes, my name is Joe Burgum. I live at 514 10th Avenue South. I'm a resident of Fargo. So I think there's a really amazing opportunity at hand for the Island Park Pool and the whole park at large. I know that there's some pressing maintenance challenges at hand in terms of ensuring that the pool is able to make it through this summer and possibly future summers. But I do think that it'd be a shame for us to miss this opportunity to really create what could be a really world-class project. I think really in order to make that happen, there needs to be a concerted effort to put together a design schema. I think even dreaming a little bit bigger, getting the neighborhood involved, thinking about the whole park at large. And I hope that's able to happen. I don't know all the nuances of the maintenance or what needs to happen now to get it through this summer or what could get it through next summer. I know that bonds are at an extraordinary rate right now, but I also think too that as neighbors and citizens thinking about who we're saving that money for, if those people haven't bought into the project. An opportunity to really get people to the table to get excited about what this is. And I wonder too, depending on timeline, if there's opportunity to do a community visioning soon. You know, I don't think this is an either or scenario or we're at two odds of something. I think there really is a chance to get more voices in the room, bring more design to the table. I think great ideas like, you know, it's open for 11 weeks a year, the pool. How does it become 4 season? How do we think about the buildings and the assets there to serve concessions or rent bikes or rent skis or snowshoes? I mean, thinking about the investment, not just in the pool, the investment in the whole park, the investment in new amenity. And I think that does take a little bit of time to think about good design and to bring those voices to the table. But I don't think that should be at odds with the maintenance timeline or the ability to bond accordingly. So I just share that as a perspective, excited to try to get involved as I can as a neighbor, if that's applicable. So thank you for the time and the consideration.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.
Would anyone else like to address the board? All right, thank you. Next up, director's report.
At this time, Madam President, we do not have anything on tap for the director's report.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for our directors from the commissioners tonight? All right, foundation director's report.
I'll try to be equally as brief, but I'm not going to use those exact same words. Just 3 items on my report. First is the foundation board is meeting on Monday. So Monday, 1:30, kind of the usual update, you know, on where we're at sports complex wise from Sanford's perspective, from the design development perspective, and then from the fundraising perspective. Secondly, next Wednesday, the 19th, is the foundation golf tournament at Rose Creek, which you're all invited to be at. Whether you golf or not, we'll find something for you to do. We're going to have a luncheon at 11:30, and the luncheon is all about providing an update on where we're at. I mean, there's been all kinds of exciting new news with respect to the sports complex. So we want to share that and make sure people understand how far along we are and how close we are to making this a reality. And then the third item I want to report on is on the Valley Senior Services side. In consultation with the North Dakota Department of Health and Department of Human Services and the state epidemiologist, we have decided that we're going to reopen our meal sites for in-person dining on June 1st. So we're not going to start activities yet. The recommendation was start meals, make sure that people wear masks when they come to have a meal, do some semblance of social distancing, so spacing people out when they're dining, and see how that goes. You know, most people that come to the meal sites that I've spoken with have been vaccinated. That's a plus. Our staff have all been vaccinated. So we're doing it in a way that we think is really safe, but we don't want to get, you know, out too far ahead of the horse, so to speak. So we want to start things kind of slowly. So June 1st, we'll open up for in-person dining. If people aren't quite comfortable sitting down at the senior center and having a meal with others, they'll still be able to take meals out, so meals to go. So we'll probably be doing both options for a while until people start to think that this is okay, that this is going to be a safe thing to do. That's all I have.
Brian, do you have any ability to have outdoor seating when it's nice out this summer? I mean,
You know,
that's a project, but
sure. No, that's something we could do. That's a good suggestion.
in the.
We have picnic tables around in our system. Probably could find some type of structure, tent or whatever to, that's a good suggestion.
I think there's probably a number of people who would eat outside that might not eat inside.
Right,
Yeah. And another opportunity to get more people.
sure.
I worry about people storming the castle on June 1st and you can't fit them all in there too. Might be an
Yeah.
option.
So far, it doesn't sound like that's going to be the case. We've been asking people and
Sure.
really it's 3 to 1 people that are going to continue to do takeout versus come in, so.
But
I think
even,
it'll-
even with people coming back, we're still going to have to make deliveries. And so there need of volunteers, correct, too, in case they do?
You have taken my role.
No, Vicki, I was just wondering if you could provide us the phone number to call in case we were interested in delivering Meals on Wheels.
We're always looking for volunteers,
Yeah.
Dr. Deutsch.
Absolutely.
293-1440.
I'd just like to ask a question, just something I haven't asked before. What is qualifying as an age for a senior?
So we receive funding through the Older Americans Act, federal funding, and they set those guidelines. So it's people age 60 or older and their spouse. So if your spouse is under the age of 60, they qualify with you. So 60 and older.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And that's all I have to report.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. No, but he got a question or two, so.
It was very informative. All right, now on to presentation and consideration of approval for our 2020 audit. Brian Stavanger of I. Bailey is our presenter.
Thank you.
No wonder Brian was so late getting here. It literally came off the press.
And on the 5:30 train, and it was a little late.
Your picture again. Can I have your autograph?
Are we saying this is Luke on the cover?
Right here.
Anybody else wants a copy? I have some extras too.
Yeah, I think of the kid who played the kid in Rocket Man.
Barry Stadium.
Is this on automatically?
Yep, it's, the green light should be on, so you just need to
Looks like it.
push your mouth.
Yep, okay,
Yeah, if you hear yourself in the speaker, it's right.
okay. All right, so my understanding is we don't have it projected today, which is fine. Everybody who is interested has a hard copy in front of them. I'll present the executive summary today, which is a summary of the 2020 audit as well as any other pertinent historical information. My name is Brian Stavenger, a partner with Eide Bailly here in Fargo. Went through this in a lot of detail last week with the budget committee. Spent well over an hour and a lot of good discussions, a lot of topics to talk about. So certainly not trying to exceed that today and not come anywhere near that today. Give you a very, very high level overview, but I'll pause periodically to make sure if there's any questions, those can be asked, as well as any comments from anyone who was in the meeting last week or just any other added comments. So if we go through probably to about page 3, I think it's after the audit recap. So really the audit recap is every year we perform an audit for the Park District. We follow several different standards. We're not looking at things 100%. We're doing a lot of sampling based on risk assessment. We're also looking at any significant estimates, making sure that those are deemed adequate by management. On the next page is the timeline. The timeline of the normal audit process is generally starting in October. October through the winter, we're talking a lot with management, getting an understanding of how the year went. We were here at the end of March to complete a week of field work, and that's where the bulk of the work happens. In April, we work on our reporting, and then ultimately in May, provide that report in draft form to the budget committee. They formally approve that. We finalized it yesterday, and here today, I guess printed today, hot off the presses, and here to present the final results. But really no changes from last Friday's meeting with the budget committee. The audit results, I'll go through these quickly. A clean, unmodified opinion. I know that's a very, very important item, and for someone here, that's the one page they really look forward to seeing every year. A clean, unmodified opinion. That's what you want when you receive an audit. That's what you receive for fiscal year 20. As we go through the audit, we also potentially have any findings. We did have a finding this year, similar finding that we had last year, but we were able to reduce it a level. There's different levels of findings. The highest level or the most extreme is a material weakness. That's what it was last year, or I should say in 2019, our previous audit. In 2020, able to drop that down to a significant deficiency. Really just a transparency issue. We are involved, Eide Bailly as your auditors, in preparing the financial statements and the schedule of expenditures of federal awards. But again, that dropped down a level in fiscal year 20. We also spend a lot of time looking at the federal dollars that are spent, mainly out of Valley Senior Services and the Nutrition Services Program. For that audit, also a clean, unmodified opinion, no findings to report in that audit. One more item before we get into the numbers, the management letter. That's a separately issued document, a very small document. It's required communication. There's some years, and in the case of 2018 and 2019, we did have some extra communication that we shared with you, those results in previous years. In 2020, really no extra communication, which I think is kind of what you want to see. So really nothing to note there. Before we get into the numbers, audit timeline, audit results, any questions or comments on that? Okay, cash and investments. Cash and investments. We've got this in total for the entire Park District, with the exception of Valley Senior Services. That is excluded from this graph. But broken down between capital projects, debt service, and general fund, you can see overall the cash and investment balance did grow in 2020, mainly the general fund contributing to that cash growth. I'm going to kind of lay the foundation for some of the other slides that are coming up. But that general fund, if you think back to, in the general fund, for anyone who doesn't know, is really the main operating fund of the Park District. Most of the day-to-day activities that are run by the Park District are run through that general fund. Back in March of 2020 and continuing into April, a lot of unknown. So at that time, management really had an expectation that there's a high possibility that our revenues are going to be substantially decreased. State revenues, charges for services, not knowing when golf courses are going to open, when Courts Plus is going to reopen. So in response to that, an expectation, or I guess lowering expectation of revenues, also lowering the operating expenses. So really trying to account for that potential decrease in revenues with a decrease in expenditures. What happened, and you'll see, revenues actually came in more than 2019. State revenues did not decline as much as anticipated, which is good for not only the Park District, but really for all local governments in the state of North Dakota. Charges for services. Once things opened up, once people could kind of get back outside, they came out in high numbers, and revenues actually exceeded expectations and exceeded 2019. So much so that expenditures were about flat or very stable compared to 2019. So when you have revenues more than expenses, you're going to have an increase in cash, an increase in reserves. Hopefully that lays the foundation for some of these next few slides. Anything to add there for comments or any questions from anyone? Next page, liquidity ratio. That's really cash on hand. How much cash do you have on hand? How liquid are you to be able to pay your bills? Historically, a very strong ratio of 3 or greater. In 2020, with that increase in cash, mainly the general fund, that ratio increased to over 5. Really, you never want to fall below 1.0. 1.0 is an indication for every dollar you have on hand for cash, you have a dollar in bills you need to pay. You really want to have an excess of 1.0. You've been very strong and liquid at 3 and over 5 in 2020. Okay, we'll move into the general fund. Those comments I just made about the general fund and those results, you'll see those here. Looking at the revenues in the general fund. The revenues are broken down into 4 different categories: taxes, charges for services, intergovernmental, and other. You can see taxes. There maybe was a little bit of hesitation or uncertainty on collection of taxes. Those really came in accordance with what you expected. More importantly, the charges for services were a little bit more in 2020 compared to 2019, and that intergovernmental really didn't decrease as much as they possibly could. Overall, you can see in 2020 those revenues increased, and there's really been continued growth for the last 3 or 4 years. On the expense side, that's where you really see the stability of the expenses. You made a lot of decisions early on in the year, in the spring, maybe in the summer, that were consistent. You weren't going to change your mind once you made those decisions. From an operating standpoint, the current or that blue on the expenses, that's really your paying your people, paying the monthly bill, supplies, materials, repairs and maintenance. You can see that blue is very consistent from 2019 to 2020. Capital outlays, if you've got larger capital items, that's that next group. You can see very consistent. And then debt service, paying off any debt, principal and interest, very consistent. Really the bigger decrease would be transfers out. Annually, based on the results of your general fund operations, you then have the ability to transfer funds out to both the capital projects fund for capital reserves, as well as funding any deficit, current year deficit in Courts Plus. You can see those transfers, that green, also decreased in 2020. The results of that, you can really see on the next graph, in a few graphs. The results of that are what remains in your fund balance. That's a technical accounting term. It's really your reserves. It's important to have reserves. If you keep going forward to the next graph, and it's called total fund balances, that's really your reserves at the end of the year in the general fund. They're broken down into different categories. The most important one that I would focus you on would be the unassigned, the green. The unassigned is really unrestricted. You've got funds in the general fund that are set aside for certain items. Either they have to be spent or you've earmarked them or targeted them for certain projects. Anything that's remaining is your true reserves, the green unassigned. You can see that increased from about 1.6 million at the end of 2019 to 4.7 million in 2020. So really the vast majority of the excess revenues over expenditures and transfers went into that unassigned or unrestricted fund balance. So that's a number. But let's analyze that number on the next page. It's very, very important because those numbers can get very big depending on who you are and what you determine is a big number. We always like to transfer that to a percentage of your operating expenses. So really, what do you have in reserves compared to your annual budget? You'll see on this fund balance slide, the first 3 years, very consistent between 15 and 20%. So in your reserves, in your general fund, you can operate for 15 to 20% of the year without taking in any more revenues. That's a decent amount of reserves. 2014 to 2019 kind of bumped it up a little bit. probably where I would say I would be a little more comfortable. 20 to 25% reserves would be pretty typical in a park district, in a government of your size. You can see 2020 had quite an impact on that reserve. So what we talked about a lot on Friday, and really what I said was, you never want to over or underreact to any one year. You want to always analyze trends, and to identify any sort of trend, you need a minimum of 3 years worth of data. So at the end of 2020, yes, your reserves grew. Yes, they were much more than they have been historically. I wouldn't overreact or underreact to that. 2021, there's still a little bit of uncertainty. You've got some significant capital projects on the horizon. Let's continue to monitor that over the next 2 or 3 years. Hearing last Friday's discussion, I think the long-term goal is to get back into that 20 to 25% range. That shouldn't be a one-year decision. You don't want to have a yo-yo effect in your general fund. If it were to ever decrease significantly, you wouldn't want to drastically raise rates. Just think how upset citizens would be, golfers, users of all the services. You really want to smooth that out. So my message and our discussion on Friday was just continue to monitor that. This year, as you set your 2022 budget, let's continue to look at that over the next 2 to 3 years. We're going to get into some other funds now, and we're going to go real quick through those, but I'll pause quickly. Any added comments or questions from anyone? Okay, other funds. Debt service fund, that's really dedicated to collecting taxes and collecting special assessments to pay the most significant portion of your debt service. That fund balance fluctuates from year to year, generally is at or slightly above about a year's worth of your annual debt service. So a good year's worth of reserves. If there ever was an economic downturn, taxes weren't collected, specials weren't collected, you could still pay that debt for at least a year and try to adjust as needed. So a good strong reserves and consistent reserves in that debt service fund. The next one, capital projects fund. This is really a separate fund where you've been able to transfer dollars out of the general fund and use those dollars for more significant capital projects. Really a way to internally finance capital projects. So instead of the need to 100% take out debt to fund projects, you can supplement that with cash, save on interest costs. That capital projects fund, you can see it does fluctuate from year to year depending on the activities that are ongoing, the transfers in from the general fund. Pretty consistent for the last 4 years, a slight increase, just over 10 million in the capital projects fund at the end of 2020. Courts Plus is the next graph. Slide dedicated to looking at the operations of Courts Plus. This excludes any debt service obligations. So just from charging members and operating Courts Plus, you can see on an annual basis, you do operate at a loss. You budget for that to cover that loss with a budgeted transfer from the general fund. And that transfer in 2020, what was it, about a $371,000 transfer. So really eliminate, and every year you eliminate or supplement the operations of Courts Plus with a little bit of a transfer from the general fund. The next, what do we got? The next 2 slides are dedicated to Valley Senior Services. We really haven't been able to talk about them yet. Valley Senior Services also saw an influx in revenues in 2020, mainly COVID-related additional federal revenues. So you can see that growth in 2020. The next slide showing expenditures. Expenditures were fairly even or stable compared to 2019, a decrease in capital. In 2019, a new vehicle was purchased. That capital, especially in Valley Senior Services, is going to go up and down based on those more significant purchases. In 2020, nothing real significant. And then the very last graph, which I think as an auditor, as a CPA, as a numbers person, knowing that you do take on some debt, you have an obligation to pay that debt on an ongoing basis, principal and interest. Always like to take a look at your coverage. So taking a look at annual operations. So in any one year, what are you generating for operating cash to be able to pay that debt service? Similar on this graph, never overreacting to any one year, trying to identify if there's a trend of high or low, because you see in 2014 there was a significant dip in that blue or governmental funds. But overall, that's been pretty consistent. Really 1.25 is the target I would have As a CPA, really wouldn't want you to fall below that. There is a line on that page, a red line on the 1.00. That would be really the absolute minimum you would want. If you fall below that, you would be required to dip into your reserves, which that has happened from time to time. But if you can stay 1.25 or above, you're adequately covering your debt service. You're also putting a little bit more in reserves for any future challenges that may exist. My final slide is to see if there's any questions on the 2020 audit. I guess it wasn't my final. I forgot the thank you slide. A big thank you to everyone involved. There was some additional transitions right at the end of 2020, and as we do most of our work in 2021, it potentially could have been a big challenge. And not to say it wasn't a big challenge, but we potentially could have delayed and not been here in May when we typically are, and we target May to present. A big thanks to Brock and Luke and everyone else who's involved in that. We were able to maintain the same timeline and get you this report in May.
Thank you. Brian, you said at the budget meeting last week that we shouldn't react. We see we see the column go up high, and it is a lot of money, but because of COVID being kind of a lifetime situation, and there's no pattern yet, so we want to be careful that we don't overcorrect and knee-jerk react financially, because we are a very large organization, and as you can see, one little percentage point moves the needle considerably in an organization of this size.
Yeah, I think the best thing that you can do is what we did on Friday, which was talk about it, and we talked about it at length. And what I would suggest is continuing to talk about it, but try to avoid those quick, significant reactions, because you want to be careful that you don't overreact, overcorrect.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any questions for Brian? All right. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks.
Do we have to approve the audit?
We need to make a motion to approve the audit or accept the audit. Okay,
I'll move to accept the audit as presented.
is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Yes?
Madam President, just quickly, as you prepare to hopefully approve the audit, I want to make sure to take an opportunity. Brian talked about the field work that happens here, and I want to make sure you are aware that really Luke Evenson as our controller, his team of Christy, Stephanie and Deanna really do all of the behind the scenes work here to make sure we have a clean audit. You have an excellent finance team there. Want to make sure you and the rest of the public understand that that's really where the work happens and deserve the credit for getting us to this point. So I want to point that out for our team.
Thank you.
Very nice.
We appreciate all the hard work you guys have gone through, and there's been some transition in that department, so it's good to have a stable audit team to fall back on for advice as well. So, thank you. All right. No discussion? Dave, pull the board.
Commissioner Rosted,
Yes, it's good if I unmute.
Commissioner Deutsch,
Aye.
Commissioner Dawson,
Aye.
Commissioner Morgan,
Aye.
Commissioner Griggs.
Aye, motion carries. So next up, board to consider for approval a request from Community Garden at Dyke West. Kevin Bowe and Dave Beats presenters.
Thank you, Madam President. Commissioners, so in your packet is the agreement and a map of the location of the community gardens at Dyke West. So Dave Beats and I met with Josiah Olson on the community gardens in the downtown area. We kind of figured this would be an ideal location for this community gardens. Josiah and his group are requesting a 50-foot by 100-foot plot of land, which we've kind of designated north of the skate park. Thank you, Carolyn. And to the east of the building right in that area. So Josiah has been working with Jack Woods from the Growing Together group, which has been a part of several of the community gardens that we have around in the area. Josiah is here to answer any questions that you may have. We did bring this to the Facilities Committee to recommend to bring to the board for further discussion and consider for approval. I will try to answer, or Dave or Josiah can answer any questions you may have.
So Josiah, you've been working with Jack Woods and his organization to set up and discuss the.
Yeah, good idea.
Thanks, Carolyn. Carolyn keeps us in line.
I want Jerry to be able to hear it.
So you've done your homework on your location, and we really love the whole community garden concept across our city, and so it's nice to have that resource with Jack Woods to bring it all together. Do you have anything you'd like to describe on what might be unique about your location, or?
And I talked about this a little bit at the previous
Facilities
time that I
meeting.
spoke. But I think one of the cool things about the garden at that location is that all the people so far that are interested live within about a block. So it's really, really community oriented. We'll all be seeing it on our daily commute through the park. So
Great.
It's kind of a cool thing that sets it apart. Yeah.
Super. Any questions for Josiah?
Well, just out of curiosity, what are you going to grow?
A little bit of everything. We've got Julie and Courtney here that are also on the garden team. But yeah, we've all been kind of picking different vegetables that we're going to kind of write up a plan for and help bring that crop all the way from little baby seedlings all the way to harvest.
And when do you expect that you'll dig in?
The 16th. We were waiting on this meeting to get approved, and then we were planning that date for our start digging and planting date.
So you'll guarantee no hard frost after the 16th of May?
Fingers crossed, right?
Well, I think it's exciting. I'm very optimistic and hopeful that you can bring that skateboarding group in with you, and it can kind of be a collaborative effort of even some of those people saying, what's going on over here? And
Sure.
I think and basketball players and whoever's down there, I think it could be an exciting addition to that corner that used to be sledding all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So
good luck.
clarification, the agreement will actually be with Jack Woods since he has the 501c3 insurance. So we'll make sure we get his signatures and on the agreement as well.
Super. Great. Any other questions?
If I can just jump in, my wife and I have been involved with the community gardens. We volunteer, I think this is our 6th summer, and it's really a cool deal to show up. Doesn't cost anything. You can volunteer, you put in so many hours, and then you get your share of what is harvested at the garden. And come fall or come August and September, we bring home tons of tomatoes and cucumbers and squash, and it's a really cool idea. I enjoy it a lot, so I'm glad to see this.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, excuse me, I think it's a wonderful idea too. And I was just wondering if you're prepared for problems in terms of, mischief.
Yeah, it's something we've discussed a lot at our garden meetings that we've had. We've had I think 3 or 4 garden meetings so far, and that's come up at pretty much all of them is, how would we deal with people coming in and just smashing everything, or a deer wanders in and just eats our whole harvest of beans. But we kind of just talked about it, and we want the focus to be on community and not so much the harvest, so that when those things happen, it's just sort of an, oh, well, we do have grocery stores. So, yeah, more for the fun in the community.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, do we have a motion?
I move that we approve the community garden at Dyke West.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Dave, pull the board.
Commissioner Rosted,
Yes.
Commissioner Deutsch,
Aye.
Commissioner Dawson,
Aye.
Commissioner Morgan,
Aye.
Commissioner Griggs.
Aye, motion carries.
Thank you.
just got to commend you on your attitude about it, though. I mean, like you said, I mean, people would theoretically be extremely upset if something like that happened and take to the news and raise heck. And just the fact that you're like, hey, at the end of the day, the whole basis of this is really the community and the get together and whatever. And so we'll clean it up together and figure out what we're going to do together. And so I commend you for that thought process, because we don't have enough of that in this world these days. So.
I think you should add around your chicken fence some old skateboard decks.
Ooh, that'd be cool.
Integrate it with the skate park, and you might have a win-win. Maybe they even want to paint them or
I
something.
like that idea. I know just where to get them.
If any commissioners wanted to show up at the Catalyst Garden on Thursdays at 6 o'clock, I'd be glad to show you what we're doing. It's pretty cool. The Catalyst is just off the interstate on 21st Avenue South.
Okay.
Is that AM or PM, Jerry?
Yeah.
Then I might be able to be there.
I might have to go to my new neighborhood community garden.
Yeah.
There you go.
Join Sundays at 4.
Sundays at 4? Actually, that's a good thing we should be saying. Sundays at 4, starting this Sunday.
Yeah.
Great. Well, we wish you all the best.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for creating this space in a new neighborhood.
And thank you to Kevin and Dave. Thank you so much. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Board to review updates to alcohol beverage policy. Dave Leaker and Carolyn Boutain, presenters.
Thank you, commissioners. We did attach a copy of our alcohol beverage policy in the Park District. And at this time, I think, Carolyn has some additional maybe guidance that we're looking for from the board. So I don't know if you've had a chance to review it or not, or if Carolyn just wants to kind of cover some of these changes we're looking at. But, we also need to add Broadway Square to Exhibit B, and then some additional questions that we'd like some guidance to regarding hard alcohol, and maybe, categorize them. You got hard alcohol, and then you also have beer, cider, and the wines. And I think as staff, we still have some work to do, but Carolyn does have some additional questions that we'll take the feedback from the commission, bring it to the May Facility Committee meeting, and then look for a June approval. So, Carolyn?
Commissioners, as Dave mentioned, this is something that we were looking at doing some updates because of Broadway Square and the activities that are being planned for this summer. Some of the conversation started at the last Facility Committee meeting, and we have started the conversation with legal to see some of those kinds of things. And so in the packet, you would see some of the highlighted in red changes that we're looking at getting some feedback on. The biggest change in the whole piece was the property owned or managed by, because again, in the past, we've not had a managed property that we've wanted to do programming at in this way. We also had some conversation about whether or not the dollars that are brought in by the permits, how that's spent. And so that paragraph basically is updated to say what we currently are doing. Consumption permits go to the recreation youth programs, and then each individual for sale goes back to the event or the facility where that sale is happening. It doesn't all go into the youth programming at this time. And then there was a conversation asked to talk about with the marketing that and the sponsorships that are being proposed at Broadway Square, is there a desire to explain how we handle the sponsorships, including our Park District logos? And so that's the final paragraph there in red that talks about the sale and consumption of alcoholic beverages on the property owned and managed, and that at this time, the Park District would not allow any of the logos associated with the Park District owned and operated on that property or event to be displayed. Again, associated is the key word there, because in the case of Broadway Square, if the logos are owned by the Block 9 partnership, are we still with our management agreement wanting to say associated, or would it be fine if the logos they own would be part of the sponsorship? So that's a piece that we want to have you give us some guidance on. And then we also have the agreements themselves for sale. And in talking with Steve Sprague with the city, they have a license for beer and they have a license for wine. And more often, they combine those two together for properties that don't want to sell the full spirit line. That just because those restaurants and bars are finding that if people don't drink beer, they might want to drink a wine, but they won't necessarily go to a whiskey or a gin or something like that. And so currently in our policy, it states that wine coolers and hard lemonade are part of our limited alcohol beverage sales. If the programming wanted to go into a event like a cider festival, by the state and the city guidelines, cider is considered a wine. And so again, wanting to get clearance and guidance from you as to whether or not cider would be okay, or if we are only holding it to wine coolers and hard lemonade. And so then with that, the other thing that we wanted to also talk about is there was some discussion about how alcohol could be implemented in programs the Park District sponsors versus rentals. Just to remind you, currently German Folk Fest has beer sold at it because, again, the nature of the ethnic festival. And as Broadway Square was put together, there were plans to have alcohol sales at things like Oktoberfest, St. Patrick's Day, other kinds of downtown events that we would want to be part of and we would be part of the programming for. And so again, wanting to have some clarity if the board is okay with that, or if we are clearly just saying that sales can only happen at rentals. And so again, we have many things to get feedback from you on, and would like to get a little bit of that guidance tonight so that we could present something more complete for you at the next facilities committee meeting. In addition to making sure that you would give us guidance whether or not Broadway Square would be added to Schedule B, and Schedule B is for the limited alcohol sales. Schedule A is for consumption permit. We would not be asking for a consumption permit guidance on Schedule A at Broadway Square. So with that, I guess the other thing would be with full alcohol beverage sales, a bar basically, would that be okay at rentals? Say a group comes in and wants to do a fundraiser, wants to do a private event, a wedding or a graduation party or something like that. And or for Park District events, if the foundation wanted to do a bar event fundraiser downtown or Broadway Square, currently our policy, we just would like to have some guidance on that as well. So sorry to dump that all on you, but whatever you can help us with would be greatly appreciated.
And in the past, we've allowed full spirits at, for associations that lease property from us, like the curling club and the zoo and those type of associations. So just, yeah, so Carolyn's just looking for some guidance.
So what we have here, is it safe to assume that everything in black ink is existing and everything in red is new?
Right, and
so
and a few of
everything
the
in black is as it is now.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and a few of the things that I did mention in my list here are a few things that did not make it into that, you know, as far as I read, or an updated version, because again, we weren't quite sure from the discussion at facilities where it might go.
So currently, we have a policy in place that covers events that we host, like German Folk Festival.
At this point, the definition that the staff has had has been that it's been okay to do that. But there was some discussion at facilities that maybe that has changed.
Okay. And so, just trying to wrap my head around all of this. It kind of all came to a head when we were talking about, we have something new, a park we don't own that we manage. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, we own facilities, people rent them, mm-hmm. They have graduation parties, festivals. They follow the laws of the city and the state to require, or to acquire the appropriate permits, mm-hmm. and our policy has always handled that fine.
Yep.
So what we need to do is adjust it so that the policy, we can continue to operate the way we always have operated within the laws of the city and the state for liquor permits and for whatever is happening on our properties. But now we have this new spot that we don't own. So we're just trying to adjust our policy to match so that we can continue to operate as we always have in this new space, basically, in a nutshell. Correct?
Correct. I mean, again, because it's not owned, we want to make sure if you're in agreement that all of the same things that go on in our own properties is how you would like the managed properties to be handled as well.
And that follows the contract that we have with the Broadway Square Partners, or the owner of the property. We have a management contract with them, and this would all fall right within that contract. We wouldn't be violating anything within that.
We'd operate it as we own it.
Right.
Yep.
Okay.
Right, and at this point, some of these things aren't even called out in that arrangement because, again, it was something before we were even doing programming.
Right. Okay. Does anybody have a question? Or do we need more time to digest and?
Well, I think Carolyn mentioned that there's things that aren't in here, right? That you mentioned, like the wine right now is under it's not under the limited alcoholic beverage sale permit.
Correct.
We talked about, so this is not your final.
No,
this is
I
a
did not expect
discussion
it.
version,
Mhm.
right? Okay.
Yeah, I did not expect you to accept this as is tonight, no.
And so do you want input on putting the wine into the beer category? Is that what you're looking for? Was that one of the things you were looking for?
Right, for some of this, we would like to, again, based on the facilities committee discussion, there seemed to be a need to have a discussion with the board members to know if you were all in agreement that wine could or could not be included in there. If you saw, or I should say, wine and cider, because cider is something that when this was created wasn't as big a deal as it is now. And again, with the research that I did with Steve Sprague with the city of Fargo, they look at it as wine based on the fact that it's made out of fruit and that there's nothing to do with the alcohol content or any of that kind of stuff. It's just, that's how the state sees it and that's how the city of Fargo sees it. So again, just looking to see if you're comfortable with cider being included in wine and wine coolers, or if that is something that you would not consider as being part of that limited sale.
So maybe our suggestion would be limited sale would include beer, wine, and ciders.
Yeah, that doesn't seem to be terribly complicated.
Right.
Are there any other things that you would, items that you'd like input upon?
The full alcohol is that if a bar is going to be allowed at Broadway Square, is it only for rentals? Or would, again, departments like the foundation be able to do something with a bar as well? Granted, they would not have the liquor license, they would still go out and have a vendor follow all the same rules. But they are a park district department, so again, wanting to make sure that you're comfortable with that.
There is a history of it.
There, as far as park district departments, no.
With the foundation.
They have done some events, yes, but not necessarily that would be covered like this.
So when we have the German Folk Fest, we hire, a vendor comes in.
Yeah,
and
we have worked with
has
Side
their
Street.
own permit and their own legal liquor license.
Right, and they follow the same guidelines that you would see in Section 3 under concession agreements. They had to do those basics.
Yep.
And then the next step is whether it's limited or it's a full bar.
Okay. And so
So
we've done that in the past. We've done it at various events.
Yep.
The zoo probably does it in the same fashion. They bring in a vendor or anyone else like that would bring
Right.
in someone else. So we're not the ones serving. We're not the ones with the liquor license.
We can't, by the law
Yeah.
of the state, the
And-
park district can't.
Are we indemnified as well?
When we have asked for those kinds of insurances, yes, that is part of our requirement with the facility use agreements and the concession agreements.
So who is it that determines whether it's going to be one kind of license or another? Is it primarily the renter then, or the type of activity?
Usually it's the event planner that comes in if it's a rental, because again, are they, for the full alcohol, we've really only done that at our golf courses. And if there's a real special event that's coming in that's maybe of state significance or national significance, we have not in the past had a group come into, say, Island Park and have a full bar. That's not our standard because that facility hasn't been set up for that. But again, when we were planning for Broadway Square and the proximity to where it is with the RDO building, and that was all part of the plans when we were working with Broadway Square and the Block 9 partners. Because we anticipated that there would be those kind of fundraising events that would want to rent the square.
Just out of curiosity, what is the difference in the cost between the two?
As far as a rental?
The licenses for.
That I don't know. I didn't talk to Steve Sprague because they have so many different licenses. There's a variety of, but again, each one of them would have a licensed vendor. And I know that Anna has been looking at going through the permitting process with certain. So we have a specific list of people that work well, know what we have. We have gotten their insurances. We know that they have paid their fees. They are a good vendor. And so those would be the short list that we would recommend people would use. And that people can be added to that, but by no means would they be just picking, their friend who happens to own a bar.
What are the fees for these permits at this time?
I think that Anna might know a little bit more about the actual fees. I know that in our agreement, we ask for a $500 deposit. And then depending upon the event that's going on, if it's ticketed, there may be a percentage charged or it may be a flat fee as far as the things that we do. Because again, we've had like the Brewers Festival down at Island Park. And so that has been always in June for the last 3 years, I believe. And so that agreement has had them follow all of these rules. And then there's a flat fee because of the nature of that event versus an event that maybe is more admission based or has a higher volume.
So we sell a beer permit. That's what I think it's classically been called by softball teams and others who want to have beer after the games.
That's a consumption permit.
Yes. And how much do we charge for that?
That's $50
for the season. Okay, so then my question would be, how much do we charge for the full permit or
generally
it
has
permit?
A whole gamut of things. Like again, the concession agreements that I'm aware of, we have done things where it's a percentage that it's at a minimum 10% of what their revenue less sales tax is. If it's a new event, there's been times that we have charged the deposit and then say $100 because we're not sure we're going to get 100 people. But like in the sense of.
So we have something in writing that gives the parameters for both the limited and the full permit. Is there something that restricts our ability to add wine to the limited alcoholic beverage sales permit? Or is that something that the commission chose at some point in the past?
That's just something that they had chose. And I know for consumption, we have always tried to be very much that it's beer and not, and again, there's always the question of what is wine? Are you going to get more drunk on wine than you are on beer?
Yes.
And so again, but in talking with the city, they kind of group wine and beer together. And again, this was developed in 2012. And so over the time that we've learned how people want to enjoy, even for weddings or receptions, they might want to have a wine. The other issue that we've had usually with wine is that wine comes in a bottle and glass, and those kinds of things don't work well in the parks. And so glass containers, if you can get wine in a box, is probably better.
So is there anything that legally restricts us from putting wine under the limited alcoholic beverage sales permit, city ordinances or anything?
Not that I found out from
nature?
Steve Sprague, no.
Well, and I would say that they probably would naturally belong there because we have two different liquor licenses, right? There's a beer and wine liquor license, which is fairly easy to get. And then there's the one with the liquor license. There's only so many of them in the city and somebody has to go out of business for somebody to buy one from somebody or whatever.
Well, I found out today there's really a beer license and a wine license and a full spirits license. But generally, G and H go together when restaurants come in and just want to do beer, because generally they'll find that their audience, if they don't want a beer, they might want a glass of wine, but they don't want to have a whiskey or a gin. So that's what, again, when I was talking to Steve today, he felt very comfortable with the beer and wine combination. But again, you have to feel comfortable with it.
I think Joe had something he wanted to add.
Point of information, so not a comment. The cost for a vendor to cater something is the same regardless of what license they have. So whether they're doing beer, wine, or spirits, that costs that applicant $50 from the city. So the parks requirement of $500 is 10x the city fee for a catering license.
But that's a deposit. The $500 is a deposit that's returnable. Yeah.
Well, I think, you know, at the end of the day, we went into this partnership knowing we were going into a partnership with a business that was going to have events out there too, and it's not our property. We're managing the property, and I think, I mean, it's easy said, and I'm not trying to minimize it when I say it, but I think within the discretion of what the event is, we should be able to figure out what's appropriate. Right? If we're going to have Fargo Public Schools concert choir down there, we shouldn't be selling hard alcohol. Like, I mean, so I don't see a personal problem at all. I've always associated wine and beer licenses as being together, and then the full-on liquor one, even though apparently I was incorrect. But you know, so I think that, you know, you can figure that out as far as what constitutes appropriate and what doesn't.
And they would follow the city and state guidelines. I mean, they make the law on how licenses and permits are obtained.
Right.
And we
Very
can
much
just-
so. We
and
expect them to
follow
hold
that
that
policy.
Yes.
The way we handle ours.
Yep. Just like any of the carting and any of the
Right.
Serving that happens, they also have to follow those same city and state guidelines.
Okay. So we can take this home and study it and come back to the May facilities meeting with our questions and have it.
And I'll have a better final document for you to look at.
Okay.
The one other piece that I would just ask is, do you have a strong feeling, again, with the standard of logos being associated with the Fargo Park District or owned logos by the Park District? Therein, you know, the Broadway Square isn't owned by us at the logo, but a Fargo Park District logo is owned by us.
You mean posted on?
If there's a sponsorship and that is going to be sold where the potential of recognizing the Park District's facilities could be on a package of any kind. Again, based on the Facilities Committee discussion, there was a desire not to have Park District associated logos. But if we don't own the logo, is that a different take on that? And it has to be owned that we are more concerned about.
Great.
So this is the red,
Yep.
fat paragraph.
That fat red paragraph.
So we are, what you're charging us with here is to decide, do we want to add the owned, do we want to add the or managed by to the whole document? Do we want to include associated logos? And do we want to move wine into the limited alcoholic beverage? Was there anything else? Is that?
I think that, and then we would want to add Broadway Square to Schedule B.
And do we need to do that tonight?
No,
Okay.
we just need guidance.
And Carolyn, was the question just to add beer, wine, and cider, or did you have a second question about full spirits? Or is full spirits off the table?
The full spirits is only if you had a concern about who would be able to have a full spirited bar at their event. If it was a Park District program versus a rental.
So say maybe the Park District event would just be beer, cider, and wine, but if somebody wanted to come in and rent it for a reception, they could get a full spirit. So maybe, does that help?
Right.
Right, which is what I was saying earlier.
But the example that I would have is if the foundation wanted to do this at the Broadway Square, they are a department of, could they have a full bar?
Well, it doesn't seem like there's any reason to limit what the Park District can do and what they can't do.
Right, I think
That
it's.
just makes sense to me.
It's the discretion of the Park District to the relevance of the event. If it was a fundraiser for only adults for the foundation to show off a project that they were trying to do and get support, it's completely different than us hosting Fargo Public Schools choir concert.
Yeah.
21 and over event versus movie night in the park with 4-year-olds.
Maybe you just have to call it a 21 and over event. Is it that easy? I don't know. But
And
Okay.
again, those things help us as we are trying to get a feel for where the board is comfortable. Because again, the policy is in place so that we don't have to come back to you every time we have somebody asking something new.
Do you want further direction than, do you want more direction now? Or are
If
we-
you have it, that's fine. If not, you can always let us know. Because again, we have another month before we would bring this to facilities. And if you do find that there's some other questions that you have, we'd be more than happy to address them.
Well, one other question I have on the third page, it says the fee for a full permit will be established by the Board of Commissioners from time to time. Kind of curious when the last time to time was. And then if you have the breakdown of the different fees, that would be useful. Not that that's the determining factor in any of this, but.
Yep, and I know that we didn't put it in here specifically at the time because then we would have to come back and adjust
Yeah,
it every time we
yeah,
had an
but there must be a
increase.
separate
Yep,
fee schedule.
and we'd be able to provide that too, because again, Marcy and some of the other programmers have that more at their fingertips than I do.
And in part 4, section 4, that's the piece with the beer and wine. I don't know how everybody else feels, but I'd be okay with the wine and not the other spirits. I don't know if everybody else wants to weigh in or not.
you mean, you said add the wine but not the cider?
Add the
Spirits.
wine, not the spirits. Spirits is liquor.
Okay, yeah, I'm
Cider falls into wine because it's made from fruit.
got it. I'm with you there. I support that.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much.
I got one thing on the logos thing, putting logos on into agreements like the Broadway Square logo. I don't think it belongs here, but I think we as a park board need to determine where our role and responsibility with the various logos that we've attached ourselves to, whether we own them or we're associated with them. I think we need to probably think about a policy that would then be used to answer this specific question. You know, it seems to me that we should have a policy somewhere that talks about park district logos or logos that we attach ourselves to, because in this whole Broadway Square discussion, I read a number of documents that came out that was trying to separate Broadway Square from the Fargo Park District, and I personally think that, you know, if we're managing that, we've got ownership of that. You know, we may not be the sole owner, but we are a part owner. And so, you know, I think we need to have that answer addressed, you know, in terms of logos, marketing, communication, whatever. That's kind of a drum that I've been pounding for a while, that, you know, I think we need to figure that part out so that then this question that's in this particular document is probably easier answered.
So Jerry, this is Vicky. So you're looking for something that would cover the logo use on anything, whether it's a beach ball, a beer can, just a general logo usage policy. Is that right?
Well, a logo use policy and probably, you know, what constitutes a logo that we should be careful of what we do with it. And, you know, like we all know we own Courts Plus logo. We all know we own, you know, the VSS logo. But this particular logo, and if Eola comes along with a different logo and the sports complex comes along with a different logo, what's our policy in terms of all these various logos that we've attached ourselves to? Because, you know, I don't think at the end of the day we'd be indemnified if something happened and our logo was on it. I think that we want to be careful what we do. So, you know, and so we have a policy that addresses logo usage.
I would agree. I think that even goes as a little one further step I think of is, let's just say Vicky's having a, you know, Silly Sally camp and I do it at Prairiewood. Can I put the Prairiewood logo on it because I'm doing my camp at Prairiewood? So I think it could cover pretty much anything we're doing.
It just doesn't belong in the alcohol consumption policy.
I agree, because I think it could cover a multitude of things.
And marketing has been working on some additional pages for that to help in all ways, shapes, and forms. Obviously, we're going to have many policy addressing that, and so we're still trying to gather the forces.
Okay. All right.
I think that comes first, Carolyn, at least in my opinion. I don't know what the rest of the board people think, but once we have that answered, then I think this will be easy because we'll have a policy that we can plug in and follow along.
So one thing to think about too is when we sell advertising on, let's just say like a T marker that's probably got our park district logo on there. In the past, we've sold alcohol, whether that's the Bottle Barn or whatever it might be, to those T markers. So it is associated at some point with some of that advertising that we're selling. So just to keep that in mind.
Yep.
What's a team marker?
So
T.
Sorry.
Team marker.
T.
None of my T-ball shorts ever had the Bottle Barn on the back.
I hope not.
Feel better.
But you know, that needs to be covered in policy too. So we've got that outlined.
Right, and I think that's a separate animal.
Yep.
So I'm hearing that particular paragraph, you don't feel is necessary at this point to keep in this policy.
Right, it's not defined anywhere else, so it would be kind of hard to be part of this.
Yep, no, and that's fine, because then we know to strike that and move up the chain, the marketing policy and the different things there. And we'll see what we can present at the next facilities meeting regarding that.
Okay, thank you.
Perfect.
Thanks for your work, Carolyn.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
Thank you. Thank you, Carolyn.
All right. Number 7, board to discuss signature sponsorship agreements with Broadway Square. Anna, Rusness, Peterson, and Kevin Bowe presenters.
And Madam President, we discussed this one a little bit, and I think it came down to, you know, as Carolyn and Kevin mentioned, the ownership of that Broadway Square logo and who owns the rights to that. And at the time, in doing some background research, our attorney, Mr. Gunkelman, found out that at this time, the Broadway Square logo is not trademarked or is not registered. So any contract that we had signed in the past would be null and void regarding, you know, our collaboration with Fargo Brewery. And help me out here, Jeff, if I get off track here. But so that agreement would be null and void. Since nobody owns that trademark logo, they would still be able to use that logo on their design of their can. Similar for Wild Terra. I did talk with Mike Almendinger with the Block 9 Partnership and let him know that that hasn't been registered or trademarked, and they should probably get on top of that. So they were going to work on that today. And once they own the registered name or trademark, then at that time, Wild Terra would need to work with the Block 9 Partnership to gain their approval for that logo. Makes sense? So I guess at this time, we're not probably looking at approving anything regarding agenda item number 7.
Okay. And
If that makes sense.
we can do that, take no action and just strike it from the agenda, or do we have to do something? Because it was part of the public notice.
I mean, I think there's different, we don't want to table it because we're not going to come back to this. So, I mean, I would just say if we had a motion to, you know, not approve these agreements, I'd say it's similar to not approve a bid. If someone came in with a bid package came in and you guys decided to reject all bids. So even a motion to reject the agreements as proposed, just so we have some finality to this, that not only are we not approving this today, but we're not going to come back to it in the future.
Okay.
I'll move as Jeff indicated.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion second. Any discussion? Hearing none. Dave, poll the board.
Commissioner Rosted,
Yes.
Commissioner Deutsch,
Aye.
Commissioner Dawson,
Aye.
Commissioner Morgan,
Aye.
Commissioner Griggs.
Aye, motion carries. All right, next up, board to discuss scope and timeline for Island Park remodel and replacement project. And I just want to say, before we get going, before I turn it over to Dave to present, the commissioners, the directors, and Joe Burgum was able to join us last Friday. We met with the WTI, and I don't remember what, Steve Crocker, the pool expert, and Zerberg, which is an engineering company that works with pools in our area, and did a walkthrough of Island Park and kind of the landscape and what it looks like today. We know that there's an urgency to the pool because the maintenance is costing us thousands of dollars every year just to keep it full of water and operating. There's some sinking and there's a lot of different things happening. But we also recognize the importance of knowing what belongs in that park and how it affects that community and that neighborhood and the people who use that park. And so we've been talking amongst ourselves and with directors about what the footprint looks like. We're not, I don't think, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we're ready to make a decision on what the exact scope and amenity looks like for this pool. We do know that it has to be replaced with something, and in the sake of time, the best approach is to try to have demolition this fall after it closes. And then we'd have a year of construction, so we'd be down for a year. And Joe Burgum did mention that, rates are good today. They could change. If you saw from our audit, we are in a very strong financial position to manage this. But we do know that we need some input from the public, and we need to start engaging with public meetings, and we need to get some surveys going. We've done a survey, and I'll let you guys discuss the specifics of that. But we kind of hope we can move this along in conjunction with the timeline for the RFP so that we can continue down the road of doing what we need to do to keep it as whole as possible, but also to keep it the right project for that park. So I just wanted to make that statement before we get going. So I'll turn it over to Dave Leaker.
All right, thank you, Madam President. And just to get a little clarification on how our initial survey was completed, I'll turn that over to Carolyn, and I know Katie is here, and just the outreach we had, I think there might have been some miscommunication between whether myself and the commissioners, but we did send out, or we received 2,500 responses through sending out our email contact list and then providing this survey on social media. So that's about as far as I know. So I'll turn that over to Carolyn, maybe Katie.
Katie was kind enough to join us tonight and has a report that will help answer some of those questions.
So, as we mentioned, we did the survey in early November. It ran from November 2nd through November 30th. And we did a mix to make sure that we reached people who follow Park District things, engage with Fargo Park District, as well as people who have used our pools in the past. We did a news release that went out at the beginning of the month and was picked up and garnered 3 news stories through KVRR, Valley News Live, and the forum that did quite a lengthy article on it. It was posted on fargoparks.com. Our targeted e-blast had about 1,200 emails, and that was a list of 2018 through 2020 pool pass and punch card purchases for pools. But our biggest reach came from some paid ads that we did. We did a paid ad on Facebook and on Instagram. The Facebook ad brought 2,000 clicks to the survey, so that's roughly 78% of the survey participants. And those are people that had no aquatics targeting. It was people who have engaged with the Park District page or are friends with somebody who has engaged with the Park District page. And we did that ages 18 to 65 plus, living in 50-mile radius of Fargo, which is the closest we could get it for this targeted ad. And then we also included it in our regular monthly e-newsletter. That was the biggest click-through rate on that, 77 clicks. Went directly to that page out of all the other mentions. Everything we did with regard to this survey got just incredible engagement, far more than actually most of our averages. Our e-blast that we did got 30% as its click-through rate. Industry average is 3%. So people who were getting it clicked through and completed the survey. Something that I'm always excited about is when I look through all of the analytics, I was able to figure out the majority of where all of our survey participants came from. We had 291 that we weren't able to directly contribute to some sort of online thing that we had done. Those we know likely came from organic traffic from a news story, an email that they got from somebody else, a share that they got from somebody else, or perhaps a mention from a local aquatics network. But the majority of what we did, we didn't actually target aquatics at all. It was really targeting pool usage, people who've used our programs, and people who are residents of the city of Fargo. So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah, we did a lot.
I saw it several times from several different groups, whether it was the Gators or the Marlins or a school swimming group or just residents who live in the neighborhood or the neighborhood association groups. So it definitely was of great interest to people.
Absolutely.
And it obviously got out.
Yeah.
Have you ever had the results that you've had like this? I mean, you may mention the percentage, but 2,500 survey results seems like a lot for.
It was a lot. We've had some other very positive survey results. We did a golf specific one as well this past year that got great results. But there again, that was very targeted only to golfers. This one was residents of Fargo and then the greater community.
And this, the way it looks like to me, they ranked from 1 to 5.
Yes.
What they wanted first and foremost.
Yes.
Okay.
And part of that is we wanted to give visuals as to what these things are, because we know that people have talked about splash pad. Well, what does that actually look like and what could that mean? And so that was part of the survey, was that it gave the ability to put a picture to what it was called so that we could help educate the public as well.
And was there a place to comment or write anything?
Yes. Yes.
Did we get much of that?
We had a couple open-ended questions, and those, Kevin, I think you maybe have the results in front of you. But we had quite a bit of engagement on that as well, and it ranged across the board from what people wrote in. Everything from parking to concessions to deck space.
It's a good start.
Thank you, Katie.
Thank you, Katie.
Thank you, Katie.
Do you have a question?
Yeah, question about the survey. Thanks so much for the info. Awesome to hear the reach that it got in the public. Curious, in the body of the survey, was there any demographic information collected as a part of the survey?
Yes, in there we asked for people's zip codes so that we could identify, again, if they are a Fargo resident or if they were from beyond. And then I'm trying to remember offhand, Kevin, you have more of the results.
Age groups, zip codes, sorry. Yeah, that was the majority of it. If they were part of the lap pool group, Ryan. Yeah, I mean, it was short and to the point, so I think it was good reach and good information. But I think there was 8 questions,
Yeah.
7 or 8 questions that were out there.
And a big part of building that is that we really intentionally wanted to keep it to a short time
Yep.
for participation. It was about 4 minutes on average, and anything more than that, people tend to lose interest.
Right.
It'd be awesome to see, possible to see the results from the survey itself, the raw data. It'd be really interesting to see by zip code and by age if people are interested in versus just an aggregate number of people.
I didn't catch all that.
Oh, Joe Burgum is asking if we can see more raw data on specifically age groups and zip codes and usage.
Thank you.
I think the answer is yes.
Yeah.
This is beyond just the survey itself, but one of the things that I keep thinking about with Island Park, and we talk about master planning, it is, you know, we We've made some changes with the theater on the other side of the park to expand the footprint for the fire truck as they look to remodel, and we've got the park. I've gotten, and I think all the commissioners received a number of emails from concerned citizens, and on a few occasions they talked about, what's the plan for the rest of the park, and I just wonder if going piecemeal and dealing with the pool now and then thinking about the master plan for the park later, if we would be better trying to figure out, all of it together. We may not do it all the first time through, but at least we've got a plan to remodel the house, and we'll take one room at a time kind of thing.
Yeah, I agree with Jerry. The other thing is, just in listening to there's resources that were used for the data, there may be other people that don't normally think about going to the pool, for instance. I've spoken to several people who say, I just never think about going there because it's so noisy and, it's so concrete and it's really not my kind of thing. But then in talking about the rest of the park, they absolutely adore it because it's peaceful, it's beautiful, it brings out a totally different kind of vibe than you get from the current pool. So in thinking about what could possibly go into a design, it seems like even if there weren't a master plan put in, or a sketchy one would be really nice, but to start thinking about how the pool could fit into the aesthetic of the rest of the park. And some of the other things that have been mentioned too are, how is it that this facility could become more accessible to people at different times of the year? I've thought about that quite a bit in all of the, regarding all of the parks, that there seem to be assets that are not currently developed that could be, that would make it entirely a much finer place to spend time for people of all ages.
And I agree with both of you that I think master planning the park is a big deal and needs to happen, and we need to figure out how the pool fits within that future plan. But given the situation with the pool and the fact that we don't know if it's going to limp along 1 year, half a year, I think it's important that we plan and try to move this forward into the demolition stage at the same time. So I think we can handle the community engagement and working on a plan while we start forward with the pool.
You're exactly right, Vicki, because the other side of the equation in my head is, was it last year we thought there was a major leak at the pool? Unfortunately, someone maybe left a valve open or whatever, but it could very well die in June, the first week in June. We're opening it up. So there is a sense of urgency there, and the related question is I don't know if the community would like us to sit with an empty pool for a year or two while we try to figure things out. So,
well, and I think the fact that we are looking, I think everyone's plan is to put the pool in the same footprint. So we're not looking at changing Island Park. We're looking at changing that corner to make a functional pool area. If we were moving it to a whole different part of Island Park, it would be, I think, a different conversation.
Or if it was a complete addition, if there wasn't a pool there to begin with, and we decided to put a pool in, that would be a whole different study.
But getting back to Jerry's original comment about, you're going to renovate the whole house and you're going to start one room at a time, or whatever, looking at the master plan of the whole house as you renovate one room at a time, I think it's fair to say that when we first started looking at this, we were just looking at the one room. And so we can be cognizant of the future plan of the entire house. And we can talk about what the future plan of the entire house looks like when we're acknowledging that the first room that needs to get done is this one, and how does it fit into that whole plan, right? As like a kid who says, all right, well, I'm gonna paint my entire room pink. Well, if it doesn't fit into the entire house, maybe that's not necessarily the plan. So point being is we can have that conversation with the community as we're having that conversation with the community about what the whole pool is going to look like, but we don't necessarily have to do other pieces of the park on the same timeline, right? So we can. So I'm saying, I think everybody's all saying, that we can still move forward on the timeline. We'll work with the community and figure out the best design for the pool, but still keep us on that thing. And with the notion that the community is saying, we would like to look at the whole park and what the future of that whole park area is, because like I said, we're talking FMCT and we've changed drastically in the last 6 to 9 months on what the one plan for the FMCT is and what their new plan may be now. So it's good to have that conversation about what the whole park's going to look like in the near future.
Yeah, even as we talk about the design, keep in mind that we will plan to look at the entire park, because part of what we had a conversation on Friday was the bathhouse. Could that be a more year-round opportunity for us?
Right.
You know, even when we look at Lindenwood Park, I think part of those conversations have to be, how can we use this year-round?
Right.
Yeah, and Joe pointed out, we only use it for a certain number of weeks a year, the pool itself. So how can we utilize portions of that to get recreation or activity that could be done potentially year round?
Agreed.
I fully support that. It's a great idea. So.
Well, and I think, Katie has shared with us some great starting information, and I think in just listening to everybody talk is, we'll try to reach out to the community, the local community and the community as a whole, and try to get some additional input, possible public meeting, I think down at Island Park for people that may be wandering by. I know the QR codes we talked about, if you want to scan, take a survey or something, maybe we can do something like that too. So yeah, we can definitely try to work that in parallel.
Well, and frankly, I get pretty fired up to see that people are interested, to have Joe show up at the meeting tonight, to get some of the input emails. That's exciting, because people have ideas and they want to be involved and they want to help shape it. And so I think that's great. And I think it's our job to listen to the community and make sure we're getting their input. Not everybody may be happy with the final answer, but I think the due diligence we do in the next couple of months getting input is well worth the time and effort.
And one last thing, I know you want to move on, Stace, but to go back to coming full circle to your stuff, like you're over here going, well, geez, this was the greatest survey we've ever gotten, and now it's getting pushed away. So we got to find a balance, right? Like, that's all great information, and this is a pool, one of only 5, how many we have in 5 total. So it can't just be the local neighborhood that is in that area that would have the final say in the thing. So thank you for doing that survey and getting that far reach and looking at the demographic data, and we'll use that and take that into account. But we also need to specifically look at that neighborhood and find a balance in all of that to get the right pool for not only our community, but the neighborhood and downtown Fargo.
I think it's also important that we get an outside surveyor, someone who's not in-house. I see so many studies going on in-house, and many times when you bring in a consultant or someone that has experience outside of your particular realm, there are a lot of new ideas that come forward and new demographics and new people who may respond. Just because it's not that insular kind of approach. So I would recommend that we hire someone or some entity to do a wider survey than the one we've already conducted.
Here's what I hear. We need to master plan Island Park Pool, which will take a number of months or possibly years to get the best data possible for what belongs in this park. But part of it, as Jerry said, we've got one room that's on fire and we need to take care of it. And that's the pool. And we need to work on this one segment as quickly as we can. Get public input through every possible mechanism we have available to us. But we need to start the formal plan of the master plan and just determine how we're going to create that in conjunction with all of this. And I know you guys don't have anything going on, so it's part, I think it's important that we make that initial, like, we need to make this a plan. And not, we've been talking about it for a long time, a master plan for Lindenwood, a master plan for Island Park, but we haven't actually done anything beyond talk about it. And I think we need to, like, jump off the ledge and get going.
Yep.
So what I'm hearing from commissioners, I mean, was everybody in agreement that we'd want to maybe contract out for this down and dirty 30 to 60 day outreach? Is that, I've heard from one person. How about?
Is it feasible? Can we make that happen? I would be in favor of that.
Hiring an outsider to do something?
The survey, the initial community.
Or just try to tackle it in-house.
Right.
I mean, that's the question, I guess.
Or work together, maybe collaborate.
I'm not sure what the survey would entail, but I think public meetings and things that we're handling ourselves, and if there's a way to do small groups, because I think there's a lot of people, if you say, oh, you're having a public meeting, they don't want to come and speak at a public meeting. But if you can figure out a way to do smaller things where we're not sitting here and they're not sitting, just a comfortable round table or
kind of an open, city does a lot of open houses and you just kind of come in and talk.
Come and they chit chat with us and tell us what they think and they can put their opinions down. And I don't know that we need to hire someone. I worry about the delay in that. I mean, I understand there's a concern with integrity, but I have no doubts of the integrity of what Katie did, that it's on the up and up. It might be that we want to pick some different questions and get some different data, but.
Well, the initial survey, and it got great responses. It was all, it was all stuff that was like idea stuff. Now we've got some actual designs to look at. And so now we've got something to react to rather than, would you like a splash pad? Would you like a lazy river? Would you like whatever? And that's easy to go, yep. Now that we've got some designs, I think people are reacting to that. And so you're going to get a different kind of response now. So however we go about, I agree. I think that we've got internal staff to do it, but I also think that we may have some people that outside of the park district that would be willing to work with us, that have, communicated with us already. So we might want to take them up and see what they can offer to help us get the input.
One of the things that came up when we were at the pool the other day was that the consultant was speaking about that the 3 designs that have been submitted aren't necessarily the end all, that there's a lot of room for discussion as to what could go where and how it could be put together. Vicki and I talked, and Stacy too, we've all talked about having a little more green space so that it would be more pleasant for people of all ages to probably enjoy the space, and just because it's water and it could be summertime and it could be a pleasant place to sit and observe activities and read a book, and just to think about some of those other audiences. It was one of the things that came up with the sports complex too, that those surveyed were the ones that were the in-house participants, that would be the users. But when I think about all the potential for people who aren't currently users that could be, and how we could actually develop so much further what the pool could mean to people.
Well, and we not only have the users, but there could be the observers. That's what you're talking about. I want to go sit by the pool, but I'm not getting in.
Yeah, could be.
And I can enjoy the pool without being in the pool. Yeah.
And maybe those people wouldn't have normally engaged with the Fargo Park District online before, but
That's
they
what I'm
would be
thinking.
people who,
Well,
Definitely not pool pass buyers.
I guess I would propose that you guys set up some meetings, open houses, whatever you want to call them, something that seems less formal, that people could come and give their input or make their comments or however we might do it. I kind of look at these drawings as, you know, I think I mentioned this to Stacy. I said, I want to take them, cut them in pieces, kind of like you'd have Legos and set them down, like when I was little and I wanted to rearrange my bedroom. But I thought everything was going to fit and it wouldn't fit because there were, you know, same thing here. I think, okay, if I wanted a lazy river and a 50-meter pool and a diving well, how would I fit that in this footprint? Or, okay, wait, now let's figure out, do the water slides fit in there? And I think that might be one way too to make us not feel so trapped by these designs that are just ideas.
Bob Johnson used to design on the back of napkins. I, like you, I use Scotch tape and cut and paste, so.
That's right. Paper dolls kind of thing.
So I certainly don't want to just set this on fire, but I have a general question as we go out to try to do our work and something we've talked about as a leadership team. When I feel like we're looking for something. So we've got survey results that we've just indicated are the best we've seen at the Park District. And to your point, Commissioner Deutsch, we got to find a balance. So what is that? Do you need 5,000 responses? Do you need 10,000 responses? You can't force people to respond or to vote. It's no different than an election. So we cast a broad net, got 2,500 responses, up to 30%, which is unheard of from a survey perspective. I'm hearing conversation that feels like, yeah, but we're waiting for something else. So the community, as it pertains to the pool, as somebody who hasn't been here very long, I look at the information and I say, they've told us. They've said what they've wanted. Are we not happy with what they've said? And so now we'd like some additional data to maybe lead them a different direction. We need to kind of know as we set up meetings or whatever, what if we get 12 people that show up? Is that enough? If we get 3,000, is that enough? It doesn't have to be 10,000. We just need to know where to go, because I would tell you from the short time I've been here, I feel like we've gone there and we brought the community data. And as somebody who has worked at 2 other of the largest public entities in this community, I can tell you when you get that kind of public support or that kind of public input, that's great input. That's a lot of input. But is that not the input we wanted? And so now we'd like something different. So I just am curious, because as we go to work, we might try to do a lot of what we've already done. And then here we are again, lather, rinse, repeat. And what I'm hearing today is it's not enough. So what's enough?
I don't think it's a quantity thing. I think it's, I mean, we've had enough people in the community who have said, I want to say, and I don't know if they didn't like this survey, if they didn't see the survey. I think it's easy enough for us to have some community meetings where people can come and tell us what they think. I don't think it takes a lot of time or energy on our part, and I'm more than happy to give people that opportunity. I don't think it has to be long, drawn out, or anything excessive with really I mean, we don't need a lot of fancy anything other than here, come and tell me what you think.
It's just finding a balance between the people that live in the neighborhood down here and obviously the users that are going to be. So for example, I mean, you know, with statistics, you can figure out what you want to know from the statistics. So for example, if we took 58103 and parceled that out and gave percentages, then we could feel more comfortable about this neighborhood area where that is getting more of a you know, and it's just looking, I mean, so you can take that survey and pull out 58103 and get a better perspective of what that neighborhood says on top of what the overall.
Although you're sitting on 58102.
Right.
Sure.
So we have several neighborhoods around here. One of them is the Downtown Neighborhood Association. There's Hawthorne, there's Jefferson, there are other core neighborhood associations. And I don't know that they were contacted earlier for presentations potentially. to their groups because they're accustomed to getting together with their neighborhood associations. And being president of one of them, I didn't hear anything about the surveys. And sometimes it's better to go out to meet with groups than it is to ask them to come to you. There are many such groups that could be surveyed. In fact, I like the Fine Arts Club and, even the Fargo Public School administrators, they're going to be right down here too. So there are maybe many people who have been left out, but really have a strong connection to Island Park, such as I do, just going back forever, growing up in Fargo. It's really iconic, and we need to address those who may have been untouched by this survey. Maybe some of the older people that haven't thought about it before.
And I think that's the missing point. When you ask do we have enough? I think that's the part we're missing. And we're seeing it in emails and we're hearing it on the street, is that we talked to the aquatics, we've talked to the users, but we didn't talk to the neighbors and potential users. And I think that's the part that we need, that one more piece to the pie. Maybe it doesn't change. Maybe it stays the same. Maybe we put everything in. Maybe we put exactly what's there now. But I think that's the hesitation, and I can't speak for everyone, but that's my hesitation.
Absolutely. You nailed it. And I was going to jump in and say that, if we were just going to replace the pool the way it is, I don't think we would have these conversations, but we're proposing something that's completely different, and it could change the landscape of the park. And that's the part where we just need to make sure we know what we're doing when we go into this, if we decide to modify the pool and add those extra amenities that have been discussed.
If we were building Davies Pool and it's 72nd Avenue South and there's cornfields everywhere and we're putting in the pool and it's brand new area and the houses are going to be going up around it or whatever, let's get this survey out, tell me all the bells and whistles you want and throw it out there and it'll fit right in that neighborhood. But we're going back into historical Fargo, and we just need to make sure that we're doing due diligence to that footprint when we do that. And not even like saying that from a negative perspective, but it's a different demographic down here. And can we make sure that we're servicing that demographic as well as everybody that we surveyed when we're going to give them a new pool?
The other thing that could be helpful is the core neighborhood study has just been completed. And that's been an ongoing project for, I don't know how long, a couple of years. And there's so many connections that have been made through the city and through the consultants of people in these core neighborhoods that are really active and really care about the development of downtown and all of the neighborhoods surrounding. And it seems to me that the demographic that we would want to be attracting to the pool are those people in particular that could walk to the pool, that people of all ages could participate, but it is our surrounding neighborhood, it's our community. And I think that if you approach the city of Fargo for many of those contacts, they'd be very, very pleased to help out. So that would be another resource as far as connections and data, that sort of thing.
Yeah,
and activists even.
Yep, I think we'll take the information we have right now and we'll try to do some, localized community outreach, open houses, put some site plans. I know cities done some open houses where they use, the little tags and you can kind of say what you want and have that casual conversation that Commissioner Dawson talked about and try to be as casual as possible, but yet get that downtown feedback that I think Joe's looking for, the commissioners are looking for, and then, we've got the overall feedback from around town. So, and hopefully try to expedite that in the next, 30 days.
Yep.
Thanks, Dave.
Perfect.
So we'll move on with that then. Thank you.
All right. One more item.
So, yeah, that's my question is, are we on
yeah,
a tight timeline?
No, I'll reach out to the architect and we'll find, I think when I talked to Madam President, Commissioner Griggs, we talked about finding what is the absolute drop dead date that we need a scope for this project that we can still get this accomplished in one pool season. So I'll find out from that. We've got a parking study in the works, so we identify if any issues with that, and we'll kind of move all that forward so that we're not down for more than one season.
Right. Move in conjunction so that we don't.
So we don't need to make that motion to approve that today.
Yeah, I don't think there should be any concern or fear that our timeline is going to change.
No, I think we heard some good news from the architects that if we could bid this out, and, that was one thing I threw out there about maybe bidding the demo out early, but from what I heard on Friday was if we get this bid out by December, that they could start the demo work probably towards the end of winter, with some of the above ground stuff, wait for it thaws, and you can probably turn it into a green site within a couple weeks, just probably only takes you a week to demo the pool basin, but.
Well, Stacy, I was just wondering if we could ask anybody else who would like to speak. I know Polly was planning on coming and she might have a word or two for us.
Well, I do live in the Hawthorne neighborhood.
Do you want to
Polly, will you come up to the, thank you.
I'm Polly Wendell, and I wrote to all of you. I live in the Hawthorne neighborhood, and Hawthorne, we've been active in the association, and Hawthorne has been we are the historians of the neighborhood and of the city. We are one of the oldest neighborhoods. So when we think of surveys, the survey, there's a lot of dog walkers, a lot of sunbathers, a lot of people, older people who walk through the park. It is the trail downtown that are not on the survey. A lot of those folks don't even have computers, so social media does not, that's a gap in that. Also, it's a funny year with the COVID in that we have not had our HNA meetings. And so even in the next 30 days, if we could get together with a meeting and have somebody from the board address us, because there's a gap there of people that do not know about this, and we need to reach them. Because another thing that we've come through our mind is this is a neighborhood that we struggle to get families in, young families. And so to put a splash park there, we don't have the kids in the neighborhood necessarily for a splash park. And we're duplicating other things in the city. So we're not going to have old ladies like me in a splash park. But in order to have a splash park, you have to have moms that bring them in. And then there's the second issue of parking. We're reluctant to see less green space because this is a wonderful park of people laying around, hammocks in the park. It's been so fun to see people doing their own little thing instead of always having to be entertained with something. It's a freedom park of enjoying the landscape rather than entities. So that's my spin, but give us time to get word out. And like the neighborhood associations that have been active in the city, we're ignorant of this. So that's my spin on it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. That's who we missed. And that's what we have to think about and reach out. And if there are invitations from neighborhoods, that it would be nice to hear from. And I think any one of us would be happy to speak.
Good evening. My name is Courtney Schaff, also a member of the Hawthorne Neighborhood Association. I wanted to thank you first for putting out the survey. Really appreciate opportunities for community engagement and involvement and to do that visioning process. I know I loved taking the survey and just dreaming big about what's possible for this space, but I'm definitely not a designer. So to take those dreams that were expressed in the survey and to really see some concrete designs and what's really possible for the space, I know would be really helpful for me as a neighbor to the pool and somebody who is definitely invested in preserving exactly what was just shared about what's so great about our neighborhood. So thanks so much for the process and engaging us along the way.
Thank you.
The other thing, just to mention this, that the neighborhood associations all have places that they meet. And I think it would be very useful for the neighborhood associations to get the word out that there's going to be a subject, and it's the Island Park Pool and Island Park, and I bet you'd get a huge turnout rather than just having a public meeting at the park, for instance, and say, show up. You know, these neighborhood associations have been working for a long time to organize their neighborhoods, so they've got a captive group. And it's certainly relevant because they're right around the pool.
And some illustrations. I think pictures help a lot of the things we've been looking at. Maybe post them right on the side of the pool. This is what we're considering. Let us know what you think. Here's our number. Give them Leaker's number, who has the wrong name tag at the moment, but. Anyway, okay. Do you need action from the board tonight on the RFP process? No. Okay.
No, we can handle it.
All right. On to number 9. Board to consider for approval additional easement request for Royal Oaks as it relates to Houston Park. Dave Beats, presenter.
Thank you, Madam President. I apologize that you're seeing this, not in the information is bad, but this did not go through our normal process of a facility committee meeting and then come to you. This is a request from the city of Fargo to do more flood mitigation. This is up in North Fargo along County Road 20, or the Broadway Bridge, North Broadway Bridge, and where our County Road 20 trail is. What we had done previously is we had granted them a temporary easement for the construction of this levee. A previous Board of Commissioners has given the executive director the authority to grant temporary easements, so Dave did that last year. Now the city has finalized their plans. This project is actually out to bid. They're ready to start, and they need a larger temporary easement, and then they do need a small permanent easement. So this is not unsimilar from what we've already gone through with Oak Grove and Elm Circle recently. So that's what this information is. The city is asking for an additional temporary easement to construct this levee, and then a small portion, just under 3,500 square feet for a permanent easement that will have some grading work done to it and an earthen levee applied to it. So I'd be happy to try and answer any questions you may have.
Can you tell me this address?
It's Houston Park, and I do not have the address. Basically, on the screen, you see the blue area. That's the extent of Houston Park is what the mode area is. So I don't even see the road there, but all of those homes are now removed. And so basically, it's just bare ground. The city has purchased all of those out as flood buyouts. So it's right as you're going on the North Broadway Bridge that is now closed. So it's property right alongside of the North Broadway Bridge, is just to the north of this picture as you see it.
This is just north of the sewage treatment plant.
Yeah. And I think it's Royal Oaks, so that would be 701 Royal Oaks, because that's the title of their development there.
Okay. Any other questions for Dave?
Does it impact our park at all?
It does not. Actually, it's going to enhance our park because we're going to be the recipient of many of the new trees that they have to plant in the grand scheme of their larger project. We're going to get a lot of those on our property, as well as we're going to get a better slope to maintain than what we've currently got.
So it's a win-win for us?
It is.
And they're doing all the work.
We love trees in the park district. We love
And-
new trees. So.
And they're doing all the work.
They are doing all the work.
They're doing all the
yeah.
work. We love when we don't have to do the work too.
Exactly.
Is there anybody who uses that park that's going to be impacted?
You know, I don't know that we would have any identified users. Essentially, it's one of those areas that we do have a name of a park, but it's basically an open green space with trees. We do have a pretty significant trail segment through there. So the trail on the right side of what is Broadway, North Broadway, crosses over just on the north side of this picture and then runs all the way up to Riverwood Park, north of the airport. Mm-hmm. So and we updated that trail in 2017, I believe, 2016.
And I'd almost hasten to say that with removal of those twin homes up there, all that mowed green space would probably just go back to natural riparian grasses and trees. So it'd be less maintenance for us. Yeah. Correct?
Correct. We'll still maintain a little bit of a mowed portion there, you know, just because we do know there are some that use it, but because we have had a couple of people that have asked us to mow more than what we currently do in the past, and we have kind of kept it to just the footprint that we have.
All right,
I'll move to approve as presented.
second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Dave, pull the board.
Commissioner Rosted?
Sorry, I was muted, yes.
Commissioner Deutsch?
Aye.
Commissioner Dawson?
Aye.
Commissioner Morgan?
Aye.
Commissioner Griggs?
Aye, motion carries.
Thank you, commissioners.
Okay, we'll double back to consent agenda number D, approval and award of bid to Livewire for the video wall system at Broadway Square.
So I'm the one that wanted to pull this back, and, you know, I've done a lot of bid work over the years, working in the public sector, and as I was reading through the rationales, I'm a little bit concerned that a $32,500 difference, I'm not sure if it's substantiated enough, and I guess maybe what I'd like to do is have legal take a look at it. You know, they've been part of the planning. Well, that doesn't really give you a leg up when it comes to bidding on a project. They confirm that their products met our requirements. Well, there wasn't anything in there that said the second bidder that's $32,500 less did not meet. They very well could have met the bid. I don't know. It doesn't say that much. So I don't know. I'm a little bit concerned that much difference of a bid rate. I'm not feeling real strong with the documentation that's here that outlines why we should go with the more expensive bid at $32,500 more.
So the one thing I would add to that, one of the significant differences in the bids that were submitted is their turnaround time and their delivery time, and that additional 2 months. The Livewire bid did allocate a temporary fill-in substitute for us so that we could continue with our programming as planned and fill that need at no additional cost, which in and of itself saves about $28,000 right there. And
so we already have $28,000 worth of video wall business on the books before the installation occurs.
we would save the $28,000 in rentals that we would have to do between the time of the award of the bid to the completed project.
Okay.
So if the low bidder was to receive the bid, we would have to rent a video system for $2,000 an event?
Yeah.
Over the next course of the 8 weeks, which would cost us $28,000 additional dollars?
Correct.
So we have 14 events already that have the video wall for the next 2 months?
That's the plan.
Okay.
And Commissioner Ross did too? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to ask for clarification purposes. So they said that they'll throw theirs in. Icon specifically said they would not?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I was going to mention. Anna and I did call Icon and to confirm that because it was part of the bid that they would provide us in the meantime as they're building this video wall, that they would supply us with this at no charge, and Livewire said they can do that. Icon could not do that. There was no support, no nothing from Icon, so.
Not to, I mean, I don't know these things as well as other people do, but that would be a minimum in the bid as opposed to an alternate in the bid?
Correct.
So in other words, they don't meet the bid then if they wouldn't be willing to do that?
Yeah, that was part of the bid process, yes.
And we had also asked in the bid process to include details on specifically the larger items that would give us a sense of the quality of the item. And that's where Icon also did not do that. So they didn't go that extra distance to prove that they were meeting the bid specifications and that they were competitive. So
maybe what, I guess the fundamental question I have is if legal has reviewed our award based on the arguments that are put in this document, if they pass any kind of risk assessment that we may have of a vendor who's $32,500 lower than the one that we're choosing, if there's no grounds for that lower bid to come back and raise an issue about, why their bid wasn't accepted, then I'd be fine with it. So, we could do a contingent motion, a motion contingent upon legal approval of the bid rationale. I would be okay with that.
Hey, Jerry, Jeff here. Yeah, I mean, the great thing about the law is there's never a clear answer, right? There's no, if it's within 30%, it's good. If it's not within 30%, it's not good. And so, I mean, we can look into factors, but generally what it comes down to is, approve the lowest responsible bidder. And that you guys as a board or the entity can take any kinds of factors into consideration for who that is.
And what the term
so,
responsible
there
means.
Looks to be some pretty good explanations here. Whether that absolutely would pass muster. I mean, I can try to find some attorney general's opinions on it, I suppose, but I'm guessing we're not going to find a clear answer that will make us feel 100% great or 0% great. Other than I would say that there just from looking at this now, because I didn't realize this was going to be a subject matter, that there are some pretty good reasons for why to not accept the lowest bidder.
And Kevin, correct me if I'm wrong, you and Anna have reached out to ICON and explained what our recommendation is, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. All right. That answers my questions.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there more discussion?
I just want to make a point and thank Jerry that this is how I think the consent agenda is supposed to work. You put the things in there that you think are consent items, and then all of a sudden somebody says, I noticed something, and I appreciate the fact that he brought that forward, and I appreciate your guys' explanation, and that's the consent agenda at its finest. So thank you, Jerry.
All right, Dave, poll board.
Commissioner Rosted?
Yes.
Commissioner Deutsch?
Aye.
Commissioner Dawson?
Aye.
Commissioner Morgan?
Aye.
Commissioner Griggs?
Aye, motion carries.
Move to adjourn.
Meeting adjourned.